So it's a pleasure, everyone, to be with you tonight. And I wanted to share my experience dealing with food innovation. So I've been a food and product lawyer for 15 years, and I have been involved in many food innovations over the last decade, like the first chicken steak in France, fat spread made of butter and vegetable oils, plant extract used for technological functions, fermentation product, and more recently, insect food and CBD and hemp food. And now the alternative proteins are coming. And when I was dealing with this client, I came to the conclusion that safer and compliant is the roadmap for food innovation. So basically, my presentation is about why alternative companies should do it and why they should do it this way. I will not talk about how you should do it and what you should do. This was the presentation of Anna Lester later today. I will not detail the novel food regulation or the other rules that alternative companies will face, like for instance, the protection of dairy names. What I really wanted to do is to get a macro perspective and share some legal and regulatory strategy insight with you. So the starting point is that safe, fair, and compliant is important because this is the objective of the food legislation. But also the starting point that when you innovate, you are in advance. You are in advance compared to existing product, to existing processes, and also to the existing regulation. So a product and a protein ingredient may not fall exactly in the existing regulation. Our company may struggle to determine in which regulation the product goes. And the authorities, they don't like this situation because they don't like emptiness. There are regulatory boxes and they want any product to fit into the existing boxes. So finding the right boxes is a heavy work. Am I novel food or not? Am I a GMO? What are the roles of the substances used in the product? Are there food additives, processing aids? Can I compare my product to dairy and meat analogs? These questions, they take a lot of time and resources. But make no mistake, I'm not telling that you do not have to do this work. You have to do it. But while addressing addressing this question to get into the market, what I want to say that you should raise your head, look at a macro perspective and address safety and fairness while you check compliance. And this is what I will share tonight. So first, safe. Why the alternative in protein ingredient should be safe? Because it's a legal obligation that food must be safe. There is no exception and there is no benefit risk analysis like in the pharma world. And if there is a doubt about the safety of the product, the risks, the legal risk, they are always more important. The criminal penalties, they are more important. For instance, in France, they are doubled if there is a safety issue. With the regulator, the risk is that they can take injunction to withdraw a product from the market or even to recall it, meaning that you have to reach out to the consumer to bring the product back. So it leads to a reputational risk. But when you address safety first, the situation is much more better, and I want to share two examples from other sectors. The first one is the hemp and CBD sector. So those of you who are in this field, you know that there are a lot of regulatory questions. Is it a narcotic or a food? Is it a novel food or not a novel food? And there have been injunctions to take this product off the market. But the way the company could challenge this injunction, keeping the product on the market or avoiding the worst injunction, was to demonstrate that the products are safe on the basis of the WHO statement, on the basis of the own position of the regulators. The argument that the product is safe was a good one to mitigate the most important risk. Same with the insect sector. In some countries, there was a huge litigation climate against these companies. Because is it a novel food, not a novel food, and it's been lasting for years in some countries. But the companies who were involved in these litigation cases, when they had the data, the analysis, their own studies, the explanation about their manufacturing process showing that the end product is safe, it made their life much more easier when they were challenged by the administration or even by the judges. They could say, look, I have the data, my product is safe, this is a regulatory case. And then it makes everyone more relaxed to discuss the regulatory issues. So what to do for an alternative ingredient protein company? If the product is under a regulatory evaluation, like the novel food, when you have the authorization, the safety is presumed. So this is fine. But when the product is not evaluated already or the evaluation is pending, it means that it's very important to have the safety data package in your pocket. It could be studies, your own studies, the bibliography, analysis of the product, or even an external expert opinion. Because in terms of safety, it's always good not to be your own caution. So that's what for point one, and it's the most important. The second one is being fair. It's also a legal obligation, and it means that the product itself, the labeling, and the marketing should be fair. Fair means it's not misleading, it's not confusing, and it's not ambiguous. And being fair is a bit more demanding than just not to mislead the consumer. And it relates to the nature of the food, its properties, composition, manufacturing process. There could be different appreciation of what is fair or not, depending on the countries. But when there is a suspicion that the product or its communication is unfair, the risk is also not the same, because it's not a regulatory penalty. It can be a step into the fraud or deception, infringement or practices. And the penalties for that, they are more important, and this is what the regulators are looking after. They are looking after unfair products. And all over Europe, the sanctions and the penalties for unfair products, they have been increased after the Hormuz crisis. So in France, even if it's a theoretical amount, it can be up to 1.5 million euros. But also when it's unfair, this is where the competitors come. This is what is likely to trigger action from the competitors. And they can not only ask for damages, but they can ask also for the cessation of the advertising or the packaging of the product, and they can succeed in putting the product out of the market. And one big example in another innovative sectors is the plant extract. They have been used over 15 years for replacing chemical additives, so many of them have been used for technological function. And one of the big issues for the authorities for the very beginning, and they kept saying this over 15 years, is that there were no additive claims. There were a lot of huge clean label claims, and the authorities, they had a problem with that. Of course, they had a regulatory problem with this product to determine in which box they are they regular ingredient or additives. But the big issue for them is the protection of the consumer, and they had nightmares, and they were very mad about these no additive claims. And frankly, it's quite common sense. If you take out a chemical substance and you replace it by a natural substance for the very same purpose, it's not really, there is no additive. There is a different kind of substance playing the same role of an additive. So what to do to be fair? I think it's a question of common sense, and everyone can appreciate what is common sense. It's also a question of legal appreciation or checking the jurisprudence. And I think that one big issue for the alternative protein business will be the comparison with the animal protein analogs. Because the cultured meat, the plant-based product, also they are protein, they are not exactly the same as the animal analogs. So I think this can be an issue or something to check about the fact that the product is fair. And the last point is compliance. And dealing with compliance issues when the product is safe and fair is always easier. So it's also a legal obligation to be compliant, and it's important from the business side because it's a passport to the market. The quality and the regulatory services of the traditional company, which will buy the alternative protein products, they will scrutinize the technical specification. They will ask regulatory questions, and they may be reluctant to buy the product if they don't have the precise answer. And this answer could be, is it novel food or not? So if it's not compliant, or if they have a doubt about compliance, they could not buy the product. And same, the authorities, in some countries, they have the power to withdraw a non-compliant product from the market. In terms of penalties, it's usually limited compared to unfair or dangerous product. But in some countries, these small penalties, they can be multiplied by the number of products. So compliance is also important in terms of risk. So for the alternative protein business, the main compliance issue would be the novel food, the GMOs, the status of the substance used in the process. And in terms of labeling and marketing, it's also a question of fair practices and specific regulations. I'm pretty sure that many of you know the protection of dairy names at the EU level, but be careful, at the national level, they start to take similar rules for the protection of animal food names, and this is the case in France. So what to do? Check the EU rules, do not forget the national rules, and keep in mind that when you struggle with regulatory issues, what is your box? It's always easy when you have addressed safety and compliance. This is my message, and now I'm open to questions.
That was great, Gilles. Thank you for answering that great presentation on the importance of compliance in alt proteins. We have a few questions here, and I think we have enough time to hopefully address all of them. The first question focuses on the US. So in the US, for new ingredients, especially plant proteins, is it correct to say that self or FDA GRAS status is essential before product launch incorporating it? And in what cases is self GRAS, GRAS, not enough for manufacturer's adoption?
No, there is no equivalence of the GRAS status in the US and what is safe in Europe, mostly because many new products, they fall into the novel food authorization, and they need a specific evaluation procedure with specific kind of scientific data. But behind the GRAS status, you may have some studies and other kind of scientific justification that can be used to demonstrate the safety. So it could be part of a safety data package, a mini safety data package, but it may not be sufficient in Europe.
All right, fascinating. Our next question focuses on some difficult aspects of compliance. It's the idea that the key question is, when is a product considered safe, and how do you navigate authorities' inconsistencies in reviewing?
Let me reread the question.
Sure thing. So the key question is, when is a product considered safe, and how do you navigate authorities inconsistently reviewing these products?
when it's safe, it's a scientific matter. And you have the views of the official scientific authorities, and you have the justification or the documents of the companies. I think that a product is safe when there is a consensus at from the scientific community that it's safe. And also there are a lot of scientific methods in toxicology, bioavailability of the product, etc., that can be used. But it's really a question of consensus, scientific consensus.
Fascinating. Your time for
I will respond to Karin's question.
Oh, sure thing.
So Karin is also a food lawyer in Europe, and she's asking me whether I'm suggesting to go to market prior the novel food authorization based on safety data only. No, obviously not. What I was saying that this is for product where there is a question about the novel food status, because it's not always crystal clear to determine whether it's novel food or not, and this primary responsibility is for the company. There is a specific procedure to ask if it's novel food or not, but the first is for the company to do this analysis. And they may decide that it's not novel food. And if that is the case, and they go on the market, to the market, on the basis of this analysis, they need their safety data in their pocket. Because if the authorities, they do not agree with the fact that it's not novel food, they absolutely need this data.